In this particular segment, we'll be thoroughly testing numerous 3DS and NDS games. I'll also be dedicating a separate video specifically to test games on various other emulators. To begin, we'll select 3 distinct devices to test a single game, and that game will be Contra 4. This specific title, Contra 4, is rather unique because the dual screens are continuous. Now, with the NDS and Nintendo's design principles, the ribbon cable in the middle and also this hinge both have a consistent size and length. So as you're playing, and I'm currently using a new 2DS here, you'll notice that the spacing between the dual screens is quite intentional. It actually conceals a part of the image. This means when you play, you feel that the dual screens function as a single cohesive unit. Alright, regardless, for now, let's just push onward. If I perish, so be it. Many sequences in this game require the action to span across both screens. When you play this game on a traditional NDS or 3DS, you won't experience a noticeable sense of visual discontinuity, especially... Hey, for this grappling hook segment, take a look. Alright, keep this in mind. Now let's experience something a bit different. What I have here is a 2DS. As you know, when a 2DS is disassembled, it reveals a single, continuous screen. The entire display is touch responsive, although the touch functionality for the upper screen has been deactivated. Okay, so playing NDS games on the 2DS, especially with Contra 4, since the central spacing hasn't been properly adjusted or cropped, and the aspect ratio isn't quite right. Consequently, it feels more akin to playing an NDS emulator on a mobile phone or a tablet. Many of the characters and the environments the game hasn't truly undergone standard cropping. This results in a somewhat strange and unsettling visual experience. Moreover, it features only a single speaker, which makes it mono sound. Just look at this. Observe this cable of mine. It simply runs right up. Right to the top screen. Hey, there's no transition in between. Okay, next up we have Thor's emulator. It's clear that the ID designer of Thor's emulator has experienced the original console firsthand. When it comes to finding a suitable emulator, I'd suggest using the Sigwa emulator, because with the Sigwa emulator, the aspect ratios of both the top and bottom screens can be tweaked, making it very much like the original console. Also, I'd recommend getting the black version of this device, then you won't need a covering, and any imperfections won't be as noticeable. We'll pick single player, easy mode. Watch the character fall. Hey, right across the screen. The screen's vibrancy and the speakers are all performing exceptionally well. Upon seeing this, some friends might comment that Thor's emulator is quite well done and truly impressive. There's actually a bit of a minor problem here. I'm not sure if any of you have noticed it yet. Let's just play for a little bit, and you'll all see it soon enough. Alright, the issue has surfaced. Didn't you observe that the bottom screen appears somewhat stretched vertically? If the bottom screen fills the display, the entire character gets squashed. Why do I say that? Let's switch to the top screen. This is the normal 4:3 ratio. The character's proportions are correct. But on the bottom screen, hey, he's stretched out, flattened. Then the comments will say, oh, this is totally, you know what, an unverified review. Alright, Let's work on resolving this compatibility issue. Firstly, the screen's overall span and the length of the central hinge both align with Nintendo's standards. Therefore, using this handheld for NDS or 3DS games will certainly provide a good experience. However, for those who are quite particular about the display's aspect ratio, this can become a significant inconvenience, because as you'll observe, the character appears squashed on the top screen and on the bottom screen. He gets stretched. For the nostalgic players, this is totally unacceptable. In the emulator, when you access the settings and select them, it will provide screen rendering choices. It'll prompt you about the layout for both the upper and lower screens. If you pick my layout, what's the issue that arises after adjusting it? You can adjust the ratio to be either proportional or the usual 4:3. However, the touchscreen isn't calibrated, so touch input will be unresponsive or imprecise. Thus, even with the emulator's updated version, this bug remains unresolved. We'll need to await the emulator's author to fix it, allowing us to then customize the bottom screen's aspect ratio to 4:3 for proper gameplay. Currently, it presents a minor imperfection, yet. In the realm of dual-screen handhelds, offerings like the Sugar Cubes Alliance or similar devices feature a central gap, a cropped partition that is simply too broad. This makes it impossible to fully capture the true NDS experience. Everyone, let's now utilize Resident Evil, Deadly Silence on the NDS to illustrate various emulator and game settings. And compatibility. This game is Capcom's port of Resident Evil to the NDS. The game is incredibly well made. I consider it the best in the Resident Evil series. Aiming, pulling out the knife with your left hand, the quick turn. You can also use the touch screen, touch Jill's chest and butt. I've mentioned this many times. Why do I always test this game? It's because the characters are in full 3D, its textures are 2D, but you can aggressively upscale their resolution. Alright, let's just skip this cutscene. Now for this particular game, the Xigua emulator truly excels. It supports a really high resolution. However, a lot of people struggle with configuring the joystick when using this emulator. So let's go back for a moment and select the settings option here. Then we choose settings. After the settings, you'll find controller input. Here in button mapping, A, B, X, Y, after all are mapped, you can set two inputs for the left stick. You can set left, see? It displays the D-pad and the joystick. So after configuring the D-pad, proceed to configure the joystick, binding both to the same axis, then, hey, it can be assigned for left and right movement. Then you choose up and down to select. Once you've completed the setup, let's first check turning left and right, moving forward and backward, and the D-pad all can be used now. So what's another great feature of this emulator? Within our button settings, it enables us to assign our microphone key. Here you'll find the option to toggle the microphone, allowing you to switch it on or off, and also to refresh the external screen. And with this button, after you've refreshed, you can also bring up the external screen. Okay, in the screen settings, to achieve a superior NDS experience, I've chosen this GL rendering method. Software rendering would consume more system performance, however. For NDS games, GL rendering is already quite excellent. You'd only need to switch to software rendering when playing Dragon Ball for the NDS. NDS Dragon Ball, that's when you need to switch to software rendering because it's more accurate. Then for the others, you enable 3D resolution. But in the Xigua emulator, you can customize your resolution. For example, 2x is 720p, this is 2x, 5x is basically 720p, right? Then 6x, 7x, 8x, it's not divisible by an even number. I typically find that 4x scaling yields the most optimal results. While its resolution has been enhanced, certain visual aspects, like jaggies, still present some problems. Therefore, for the filter, I've selected LCD. Oh, the bottom screen display, let's just go back. Do you see the top screen? It actually has some scan lines or dot matrix lines, which help to filter out some of the pixelation. Now look at the character on the bottom. The character's 3D model is already anti-aliased. Alright, go ahead and touch the butt. Alright everyone, so now we have arrived at this Moga Woods scene. In Moga Woods, if you're using V-rendering and you proceed to Area 1, the game will inevitably crash. It crashes 100% of the time without fail. I've learned this lesson through numerous tests and verifications. The moment you descend into the underwater area from Zone 1, making your way to Zone 3, it inevitably crashes. The Baihua emulator, whether we're talking about characters, shadows, or even the textures, its operational efficiency is quite exceptional. I have it set to 2x here, or perhaps it's 4x resolution. See, it remains very high definition, even beneath the water. You'll encounter lanternfish and sea dragons here. Monster Hunter Tri is the one I've enjoyed the most. Many Monster Hunter games, and it's also the one I personally find to be the most enjoyable. Alright, so here, I'm hoping my fan friends can help me resolve an issue. It concerns the controller settings for the Baihua emulator. I haven't been able to properly configure it. Within the game controller options, my D-pad is unresponsive. My D-pad, in fact, it's already set up. For example, it says here, doesn't it? The D-pad buttons, up, down, left, right, I've already configured them. However, the D-pad is unresponsive, so I'm forced to use the right analog stick as a substitute for the D-pad. For instance, if I open my menu now, ordinarily I'd press the D-pad, but I must use the right stick instead. Fortunately, this right stick is actually mapped to the camera view, controlling the camera. Or I could even use the on-screen camera control too. So, I'm wondering if there's any emulator expert out there who could tell me why the D-pad can't be mapped in the Baihua emulator? Okay, moving on to the orange emulator, we'll proceed as usual. Let's put Dead or Alive to the test. As you can observe, the shadow textures are experiencing issues. Look closely, these shadow textures clearly have a problem. We will proceed to Settings, then Display. Within this menu, you'll find a Force Texture option. We need to change that to Accurate. This just ensures precision in calculation. You cannot set it to Fast or disable it. It absolutely must be set to Accurate. After accurate is selected, all its models, including shadows, will render without errors. However, its preloading time will be somewhat lengthy. Alternatively, if texture errors persist, you'll need to navigate to Settings, then Graphics, and adjust the rendering language. You need to change that to OpenGL, or perhaps the Vulkan algorithm. Now let's take a look at the gyroscope. As you can see, the gyroscope is working perfectly. Let's exit and switch the algorithm. Alright, we've adjusted this rendering language. Look at the shadows and gyroscope controls. They're all very... It's so smooth now and much clearer. However, every time a new scene loads, there's a preload at the top, which causes a slight momentary stutter. Oh, this visual quality is almost on par with. Alright, let's dive into the game. The reason I'm not using Street Fighter 4 for testing is specifically because Dead or Alive is a full 3D game. Yo, my friends! This is a full 3D game, and you can directly execute moves by tapping the bottom screen. No other fighting game can truly compete with that. What's more, it also features a Y-axis. Alright, let's move on from this part.
Now, your turn. Strike.
How? How do I get into the right mode? I want to go to the fighting game mode, arcade mode, yes. Which lovely lady should we watch, guys? Kasumi or Lei Feng? Let's go with Kasumi, I think. Kasumi is a bit more daring, wouldn't you say? And this also serves as a tribute to our esteemed master Itagaki. Alright, it's really stuck during loading. Wow, it suddenly became so smooth. This is just incredibly fluid. Dead or Alive, dead. Dead or Alive. Why was that game deemed worthy of being showcased at WCG back in the day? Esports, because that game truly achieved a rock, paper, scissors guessing system for every single tactic. It's the core of 3D fighting games. Oh, it's jammed. It's frozen. Hey! When a scene is preloaded and rendered, it often results in stuttering. This is that infinity stage, or whatever it's called. It's already preloaded for fixed scenes, unless you manage to knock someone clear out of the scene itself. I mean... Let's press this throw again. As you can see, it's a throwing technique followed by a counter technique. The counter technique is categorized into high, low, and mid counters, 3 types of counters. This is actually where the rock, paper, scissors mechanic in early fighting games originated. Street Fighter 6, in fact, drew a lot of inspiration from Dead or Alive strategies. Every single attack has a corresponding counter strategy. Next, let's test Resident Evil, the Mercenaries. With the orange emulator, my D-pad functions perfectly fine. So, which character will I choose now? Here, only Hunk and Rebecca are available, so let's go with Rebecca. The little nurse is quite adorable. This segment is primarily for testing the joystick sensitivity. The joystick sensitivity, along with the game's various effects. Alright, in this situation, the right stick serves no purpose. The left stick is for movement and aiming. The right stick remains non-functional because we haven't enabled the C-Sticks mapping yet, and within the settings, aiming will also cause the view to switch to a first-person perspective. I really have to say, for testing any game, Capcom truly shines. The optimization is great, and the controller adaptation and operation are also excellent. I use Capcom games for most of my controller tests. You see, it's a 2D joystick, so it can't be pressed down, and its linear range is extremely short. It still adapts so wonderfully. I'm currently utilizing a Hall effect joystick, and the aiming is incredibly precise. I can point and shoot with perfect accuracy. Headshots. Oh, there's no gyroscope for headshots. Yet it still performs remarkably well even without gyro adaptation. The character's lighting effects, along with when objects are far away, the frame rate drops because of this distance-based rendering, but it suddenly becomes smooth once you get closer. This is done to conserve resources, since the 3DS's graphical performance wasn't very strong. Now let's switch to this big gun. Hey, throw 10 flashbangs. You can see how efficiently it handles even the shadow resources. With this screen ratio in effect, I could honestly play Mercenaries for an entire year. No problems. Just, when I'm traveling or commuting for work, I can simply open up a game and play a couple of rounds. It's truly excellent.